tradition. So welcome everyone who is joining us tonight. Our session is that we will have a guided loving kindness meditation. And as you saw on the video, we have different facilitators for that. And tonight I have the honor of leading meditation. So we'll do that in just a couple minutes. And then after that, we have a brief check-in. And then a topic is presented, and it's our great honor tonight to have Rabbi Dan Gordon guest speaking for us. And so at that time, I will turn over the session to him, and he will speak with us about loving kindness in the Jewish tradition. And the reason that we asked him to come on this particular day is that we are starting a new book called The Sacred Art of Loving Kindness by Rabbi Bravi Shapiro, and Dow Norbu is holding it up. So if you're not familiar with this group, you can drop in at any time to this group. We have a rotating set of facilitators, 4 different facilitators, and we use the book as inspiration for the topics that we're discussing. So sometimes we might read out of the book a little quote or paragraph out of the book, or share a concept out of the book, but then our facilitators will invite us to take that more take it deeper, take it wider, will invite us to contribute in discussion to understanding that particular topic. So for all of you who might be here for the first time, just know that you are welcome to come and join us at any time if you're interested in exploring the topics that are presented in the book, but you do not have to have the book. And I'll ask that our 2 moderators put the name of the book in the chat in case you didn't catch it and you want to take a look at it later. So with that, during our meditation, you can leave your video on if you'd like, or you can turn it off. It's entirely up to you. And we're going to be together in meditation for about 20 minutes. So I'll let you get settled in. And as we do that, I want to acknowledge that sometimes in our sessions, when something really difficult happens in the world, we'll stop and we'll talk about those things and have time to process and debrief. And other times we don't. We actually take a break from those topics. We take a break to allow our minds to rest and restore and become more resilient for the work that we may need to do to respond to the events that are happening in the world. So I just want to acknowledge what is happening, what has happened in Israel and in that area this morning was very difficult for many of us to hear. So many people have been affected in that area on both sides. And so tonight, the way that we're going to incorporate that is I'll have a special time in our loving kindness practice where we can send loving kindness to all those who are affected, those who were lost, those who are involved in the politics, those of us even here whose hearts are in upheaval because of that. And then we're going to invite everyone to let our minds rest from that and to be present with Rabbi Dan tonight to listen to the inspiration, the upliftment that can help us be more resilient in the world. So if you're looking for a place to put those feelings, we're going to incorporate our care and concern and love for all beings, especially those who've been affected today, into our loving kindness practice toward the end of our practice. So in order to focus on practice, we want to just have a moment of transition where we set down whatever we've been doing before. If we were rushing to get here, or if we had a stressful day. And we can actually use our meditation for relaxation. But if we relax and calm the mind before meditation, something deeper can happen in meditation. And that's for us to discover over time. So if you'd like to close your eyes, you're welcome to do that. Or you can soften your gaze and just allow yourself in transition to have a normal exhale. And let the exhale go all the way through to completion. Now, this might be the hardest thing to do in the session tonight, is to just let your breath be exactly what it is. Don't change it. Just allow it to go through to its natural completion. And at the end of the breath, there's a pause. And allow yourself to have that pause. It could be short or fast. Your breath could be deep or shallow, smooth or jagged, it doesn't matter. Just allowing yourself that exhale. And then I invite you to generate a feeling of loving kindness, and there are many different ways of doing this. One person describes loving kindness as the way that you feel when someone genuinely smiles at you, or when you genuinely smile at someone else. Sometimes we generate this feeling by remembering a time where we were loving and kind, or someone was loving and kind toward us, and feeling into that feeling of loving kindness. And lately we've been exploring this idea of the lightness of our own being. As if we're made of light. Quantum physics indicates that we may be simply made of light. So, however you choose, choosing a method that makes sense to you, perhaps as you feel that lightness of your own being, beginning to feel the warmth of loving kindness in your heart. And you may feel it very strong, like rays of the sun, but it might also be just faint. Or you may feel nothing at all and just imagine what it feels like. And any of those are okay. And then allow that feeling of loving kindness to radiate to all the parts of your being. You might imagine it flowing like water, or radiating like waves, or whatever makes sense to you. For me, it's like light radiating down into my feet, to my back, down into the hands, up into the head, allowing it to suffuse or permeate your whole being. Allowing it to permeate your mind, your consciousness, your actual being, or your spirit, if that makes sense to you. Let it flow throughout the cells of your body, around them, in between them, and through them. And science is showing us that the body does have an electrical field. It's possible that your being extends beyond your body a few inches. So letting that loving kindness fill all of that space as well. And for some who practice loving kindness, it's helpful to add a wish from the heart, a wish that is felt. May I have happiness. May I have peace. May I have ease and comfort in the ever-changing circumstances of life. And I invite you to generate a sense of fullness, of being filled with loving kindness, of perhaps receiving that in the fullness of your being, like being filled with light. As we now think of a beloved person, a friend, family member, a pet, a small child, but just one person. If you think of more, you can add them in later. And you can see that person in front of you or wherever they are. And from that fullness, that sense of fullness, that imagined fullness of loving kindness in your own being, radiate loving kindness to that person wherever you see them, that beloved person. For some of us, our loving kindness, our sense of loving kindness may be stronger for this person. And for others, it might not feel so strong, or we might not feel it at all. And we just imagine it. And any of those is okay. And we might wish, may you have happiness. May you have peace. May you have ease and comfort in the ever-changing circumstances of life. Now I invite you to call to mind a neutral person, someone you don't know very well. Perhaps you pass them by in the grocery store, or maybe it's someone you saw for the first time tonight. And send loving kindness to that person wherever you see them. Let it radiate from you to them. lose track of your loving kindness, if it feels difficult to send or focus, we have a tendency to try harder, to really push. But I invite you, if you're feeling that, to relax. Try relaxing just a bit. Allow your heart to fill with loving kindness. And then send it again to that person wherever you see them. Just test it out. See how it works. And we wish, may you have happiness. May you have peace. May you have ease and comfort in the ever-changing circumstances of life. And now I invite you to call to mind a difficult person, but not somebody who's ruined your life. Just a mildly challenging person. Maybe it's someone that you love, but you couldn't find agreement today. And radiate loving kindness to that person wherever you see them. And again, it doesn't matter. It could be a lot of loving kindness, a very small amount. It could be imagined. But if it becomes challenging, I invite you to relax. Allow yourself to be filled with loving kindness to the extent possible. And then again, radiate loving kindness to that person wherever you see them. Wishing, may you have happiness. May you have peace. May you have ease and comfort in the ever-changing circumstances of life. And now seeing all four together: yourself, the beloved, a neutral and difficult person, and radiating loving kindness to all four equally at the same time. Now, this step isn't always included, but it's very important and very different from the other steps. And this is a practice, so you don't have to be perfect at it. Just give it a try. Radiating loving kindness to yourself, the beloved, neutral, and difficult person, in the same amount, simultaneously. Now I invite you To allow that loving kindness to expand in all directions, in front and behind, to the left and right, above and below you, slowly expanding in all directions. Throughout the building you're in, throughout the block you are on, throughout the city and town, throughout the state and country. Let it reach all of those who are beloved, all of those who are neutral, all of those who are difficult. Let it reach all of those who are suffering, especially today. All of those whose lives have been touched with difficulty. Let it touch all creatures, the smallest of them, the greatest of them. Let it go up into the sky, down into the earth. Let it go out into the universe. Let it touch all the tardigrades in space, and all the aliens if they are there. Let it go everywhere. Imagine what it's like if all beings in all directions were filled with as much loving kindness as they needed. As if it were effortless, like breathing in air and breathing out air. Effortless, like rays of the sun falling on your skin. Let it touch. Let it heal. In every direction. And we might wish, may all beings, in every direction, great or small, have happiness. May they be free from suffering. May all beings have peace. May they find ease and comfort in the ever-changing circumstances of life. Take a moment to imagine what life would be like if everybody had as much kindness as they needed. Let your mind be lifted into that idea, that possibility. And let that be the greatness of your wish. May all be happy. May all have peace. May all have ease and comfort in the ever-changing circumstances of life. And now, just before we end, I'd like to invite you for a moment to recognize that all over the world, there are people sending loving kindness to you. People who don't know you. Take a moment to acknowledge or accept or receive that loving kindness from those strangers who are wishing you happiness and peace. And then when you're ready, slowly open your eyes. Become aware of the room around you. And I invite you, as you're ready, to turn your video back on. And as you do so, I'm just going to check. I'd like to welcome Rabbi Dan Gordon. We're going to put him on spotlight so you can see him well as he talks with us tonight. And I'll turn it over to him.
Thank you, Pema. What a beautiful meditation, and what a way to start by just thinking about what if we had all the loving kindness we needed, and God willing, we are able to have so much that when we give it away, we lose nothing. Kind of like a hug. You ever notice how when you hug somebody, you lose nothing? You've given away a hug and you've gained a hug.
Mm-hmm.
As we begin, Pema and I were talking about how it's such a large group and so many newcomers. I too am a newcomer. And so we were going to do a very short breakout and let people just introduce yourself to 3 other people and say, what does loving kindness mean to you? What does that term mean to you, either as a giver of loving kindness or a recipient of loving kindness? And as you gather in this small group, I'd also like to invite you to focus equally as much or more on what you are hearing as what you're saying. So with the help of our technical wizards, we're going to move into the breakout rooms of about 4 people. Is that working out?
Yes, so we'll send you, Lakipu is getting ready to send you into rooms. If you don't feel like talking today, you can decline and remain in the room with us. But otherwise, we'll see you in about 5 or so minutes.
So without coming back and reporting, which I would normally do, but we're don't have that much time. But just to think about something that you heard that didn't occur to you before. And that was one of the exciting things for me, because I was the 4th one to speak. And I've been thinking about loving kindness a lot. And yet I heard 3 different perspectives that hadn't come to my mind. I'd like to share with you first a little bit about who Rabbi Rami Shapiro is, the author of the book that you're going to be studying. And I'm going to start with a poem that he wrote as an alternative prayer to a paragraph in our Hebrew prayer book that's called Ahavat Olam, which means love of the world. And the way he puts it is, we are loved by an unending love. We are embraced by arms that find us even when we are hidden from ourselves. We are touched by fingers that soothe us, even when we are too proud for soothing. We are counseled by voices that guide us, even when we are too embittered to hear. We are loved by an unending love. We are supported by hands that uplift us, even in the midst of a fall. We are urged on by eyes that meet us, even when we are too weak for meeting. We are loved by an unending love. Embraced, touched, soothed, and counseled. Ours are the arms, the fingers, the voices. Ours are the hands, the eyes, the smiles. We are loved by an unending love. I think that I first encountered Rabbi Rami Shapiro by reading those words in a prayer book. And he was very anonymous. And then I read a few books. I heard him speak once, and I was intrigued enough to want to meet him in person and to want to introduce him to my synagogue. And so I just called him up, said I was able to get a grant for a guest scholar, and would you like to be it? And he came to my community, and there was a small group that was so enriched by his teachings that they formed their own study group and read every one of his books. Um, and they're very excited about it. And it's been going on for 15 years. That's what an impact it is. And what I found out about him was the very interesting thing when you study somebody's works and then meet them in person and realize what a difference there is between how someone behaves and what they teach or write. And my first reaction when I met him was that he was a cynic. And I thought, how is this rabbi who writes such beautiful things be so cynical? And what I realized was that it wasn't about belief, it was about the cynicism of insincerity. That what he was really hoping for and looking for was when people engaged, that they really meant it. In addition to the book that you're studying, Rabbi Rami had written an entire series of tiny little books like this: God, parenting, Psalm 23, forgiveness, things like that. And in the spirit of his irreverence, his bio at the end of these books says, born Yerachmiel ben Yisrael Nasara in 1951, Rami spent several years in kindergarten trying to learn how to pronounce his name. Being the only first grader who had to shave, Rami was promoted through school quickly, earning both rabbinic ordination and a PhD. Forced to get a job at 30, Rami led a congregation for 20 years where he learned that irony, humor, and iconoclasm made for pure bedside manner, and honesty was rarely the best policy when it comes to religion. Does that sound like the words of a rabbi? The honesty part. That's where the sincerity comes in. And that's where loving kindness comes in. Because there are things that we are taught we're supposed to do. We're supposed to give money to those who need it. We're supposed to visit the sick. We're supposed to teach our children. We're supposed to honor our parents. Loving kindness is something you cannot measure. It's something that comes from the heart. I'm also going to mention a couple other books by Rabbi Rami that will intrigue this interfaith group. One is called Perennial Wisdom for the Spiritually Independent. This is a book, and I'll send this to Pema and she can forward it on to you. This is a book that takes wisdom from all different traditions. And what I found interesting about that is that Rami is a Jew and he is committed to his Jewish faith, but he's not necessarily committed to every aspect of it. He's not committed to Christianity or Islam or Buddhism or Hinduism, but he is able to find those things in each of those traditions that he respects. The other book is called the World Wisdom Bible, where he again takes aspects of different faiths. But the other one that is exciting is called Holy Rascals. This is a term that he's invented by himself. He got together with some faith leaders from different communities. They had a retreat together and they called themselves Holy Rascals. And this has many different sayings, but the one that struck me the most is where he says, and I'm going to use the word God here, knowing that everybody may have a concept of God that's different from everybody else's. But it is absolutely true that God as a concept exists. Because even if you don't believe in God, you know people who do. And so there's that concept out in the world. So what Rabbi Rami says is everything about God is real. Everything that's said about God is made up. And here we have that idea of what religion teaches us about different things that may be real, but may be part of what our faith just leads us to be. One of the key teachings in Judaism comes from a book called Pirkei Avot, which means the ethics of our fathers. And it's different sayings. And one of them is the world stands on three things: on Torah, Avodah, v'gimilut chasadim. Torah means learning. Torah is also the scroll of the books, but Torah in general means learning. Avodah is sacred service, sometimes called worship, but often deeds of service. And gimilut chasadim, deeds of loving kindness, is the third thing. Now, those who may have had experience with, I'm told that the trilogy, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, is that each are like a three-pegged stool that each stands on each other, that nothing is more important than the other. And the deeds of loving kindness, those are the things that are immeasurable. We also have a teaching that there are rules, rituals, and things that can be measured, including what you give to the needy. Now, there is no word for charity in Hebrew. Charity is what you give from your heart. The word in Hebrew for giving to others is tzedakah, which means righteousness or justice or fairness, that we're obligated to make things fair. So you can legislate that. The Bible legislates that making things fair means a number. 10% of what you have should go to those in need. There are rituals and rules, lighting candles or worshiping at a certain time. All those things you can measure. But the idea of kindness has to be sincere, has to come from your heart. And so the other thing that I wanted to mention is about, so you've got these pillars: learning, service, and deeds of kindness. Where does grace come in? Grace is one of those other terms that seems difficult to define. Grace, according to Rabbi Shapiro, is the ability to experience life as it is without wishing it were otherwise. The ability to experience life as it is without wishing it were otherwise. This is the thing that gnaws on us. We always want something different. We always have something that we are looking at that we want that we don't have. J. Paul Getty, who was once the richest man in the world, was once asked, "How much is enough money?" He said, "Just a little more." We always want something more. Pirkei Avot, the ethics of our ancestors, says, who is the richest of all? The one who is happy with what they already have. This is what richness is all about, is having what you already is being happy with what you have. One of the books of the Bible that is, I would say some scholars don't regard it as factually happening. The Bible is an interesting thing, whether you're talking about the Hebrew scriptures or the New Testament. Um, the Jewish people generally don't use the term Old Testament, like I don't call Lauren my first wife. I'm not expecting another wife. So that's where we are there. But the Bible is cryptic. If you read the Bible and you see the teachings there, you have something like honor your father and mother. It doesn't say explicitly how. And so the Jewish tradition, we have volumes and volumes of things that teach us how. And the best way that I find of learning loving kindness is through stories. That this is what has kept our people alive, is the stories of tradition. And so I thought with some of the time that I have that I would just share with you a few stories that just feel right in terms of how they connect with kindness. One of them is about a man who was nervous about what the next life would bring him. And he had a dream, and in the dream, he was given a tour of the afterlife. And the first room that he was led into was a large banquet hall with every kind of food you could imagine. The aroma was intoxicating. And he looked around and he said, "This must be heaven, all this wonderful food." And the angel who was taking him said, "No, it's hell." Why was it hell? He was told, "Look at the people." And he looked, and oddly enough, the people were sitting around the table and not enjoying the food. You see, they had a fork on one hand and a spoon on the other, but they had no elbows. And so, try as they could not reach the food to their mouth. And hell was all about having this temptation in front of them without being able to enjoy it. He said, "Show me another place." So they went to the next room, and it was an identical ballroom, same food. He said, "You took me to the same place?" "No, these people are enjoying the food." "How is that?" "They must have elbows." He looked again, they didn't have elbows. But these were the people who understood that they could use their arms and feed each other. And the only difference was that kindness had come to their minds. These are the kinds of things that the human has the capacity to do. Animals know only what they need. Human beings, we have the choice. And our natural instincts don't always lead us to kindness for others. Our natural instincts sometimes, perhaps often, lead us to what is best for us. Sometimes it's recognition, sometimes it's ego, sometimes it's wealth. A story is told about a village that did not have a rabbi. And so they decided they would send one of their young scholars to the next town to learn with the rabbi in the next town. They found one of their scholars was very smart, but perhaps not so wise. But they sent him to learn. And he went on his train with a stack of books, and he was studying those books. And as he was studying, somebody approached him, and he was focused. He was not going to let himself be interrupted by any distraction. He wasn't even going to respond. He just kept on looking at those books and studying, because he was going to impress his new teacher, that new rabbi that he was going to study with. And as he was studying, the person who was nearby kept on pushing a little bit and getting closer. And he was trying to push away and keep him away. But finally, that person spoke and said, "Sometimes it helps if you have a partner." And he looked up and he saw an older man with clothes that didn't fit very well and a scraggly beard. And he said, "I'm busy. I don't have time for you. I am meeting the great rabbi in the next town. I'm going to be his private student. I'm going to learn from him, and I need to be prepared. So please leave me alone." And the old man said, "As you wish." And when the train stopped, there was a crowd to greet the train. And the student was surprised. He thought they came out to see me. But no, they ran right past him and said, "Rabbi, Rabbi, we're so glad you're back." And who did they approach? Of course, the old man on the train. Well, the student was flabbergasted. He was so upset. "I've insulted the very person who I came to learn from. I might as well just leave now." And his hosts encouraged him to go and apologize. So he went to the rabbi's house, and the rabbi refused to hear him. And the student was frustrated and upset. And he said, "Have you no grace? Can't you accept my forgiveness? I really was sorry. I was so sorry to have insulted you like that." And the rabbi said, "Well, you did not insult me. I find no insult at all. Because if you had known who I was, you never would have treated me like that. No, if you want forgiveness, if you truly want forgiveness, go find an old beggar, offer to study with him. And when you learn that you can learn from anyone, then you'll be ready to learn with me." Well, that's what he did. And another teaching from Pirkei Avot is, who is the wisest? Those who can learn from anyone. And who is to be honored? Those who honor others. And so this young scholar studied with the rabbi, and he became a rabbi himself, so revered that people would line up to wait to have consultation with him. And there was another village that was lacking a rabbi. And that village also decided to send a representative to go meet the rabbi in the next town with a list of concerns. And when he got there, he had the list of concerns, and he had waited a long time in line. He started to list them, and the rabbi said, "Wait a minute, what's the name of the town you're in?" And he told him. And the rabbi said, "Well, you're coming to me for questions? The Messiah lives in your town. Don't come to me when you've got the Messiah in your town." And the man said, "Really? The Messiah in our town? Who is it?" And the rabbi said, "You mean you have the Messiah in your town and you don't even know who it is? I don't have time for you." And he went back to the village, and people wanted to know, "Well, what did you learn? How did he answer the list of questions you had?" And he said, "Well, he said, the Messiah lives here." They all looked at him and they laughed. "Oh, how could you get it so wrong? The Messiah in our town, really? With all this? What a fool." And he was so confused. And he just didn't know what to do. And he was walking along, and he went to go pick up his his clothes from the tailor. And he asked for his clothes from the tailor, and the tailor said, "I wasn't there when everyone came to see you. What did the rabbi in the next town say to you?" He said, "Well, he said the Messiah lives here." The Messiah, what a joke. Who does he think it is? Me? Here, take your clothes, no charge today. And he was just flabbergasted. What could I do? So the tailor has no learning at all. The tailor, a Messiah, all he ever does is give a fair price and extend credit when needed and show some kindness. Maybe that's the kind of quality that a Messiah would have. Maybe I need to give the tailors a little more respect just in case. And as he was walking, he bumped into the undertaker, who had been there and said, "Oh, what, the Messiah? What a foolish thought you had. Who does he think it is? Me?" And they both had a nice laugh. And he said, "Oh, yes, the undertaker, of course, a Messiah. Right? He doesn't even do any, all he does is the thing none of us want to do. Take care of our beloved dead. Maybe that's the kind of quality a Messiah might have. Maybe I need to give undertakers a little more respect just in case." And then he tripped over a child playing in the street, and the child was very polite and helped him dust off his clothes and helped him up and was very kind to him. And he thought, well, everyone's a child sometime, aren't they? Maybe a child could be the one he's talking about. Maybe I need to give children a little bit more respect just in case. And as he continued to walk, he ran into a woman who was bringing a roast over to a house of mourning. And he thought, why would I think a Messiah can't be a woman? Maybe I need to give women more respect, just in case. And he went home. He was so confused. He looked in the mirror and he talked to himself. And he asked him, how is this so confusing? Tailors, undertakers, women, children, any of them could be a Messiah. Why, if any of them could be a Messiah, then it could be. Well, why not? He thought as he looked in the mirror. Could be me. Maybe I need to give myself a little bit more respect, just in case. Well, it seems he wasn't the only one who was thoughtful that day. Because from then on, this village where people had been sniping at each other, had been stabbing each other in the back, had been disrespectful to one another, they started giving others respect, just in case. The merchants, the lawyers, the doctors, the workers, the children, the women, they all wondered, who is our Messiah? And many of them even decided to give themselves more respect, just in case. And the village changed because everyone was respectful to everyone else, and it became known as the land of Messiahs. Another thing that I wanted to mention, in addition to these stories, is that sometimes the modern world brings new kinds of ideas. And the book club that was inspired by Rabbi Shapiro has started a new book called The Zen Commandments. And the author of the Zen Commandments, I'm forgetting the person's name at the moment, but it's probably easy to find, is a real movie lover and makes mention of the movie Groundhog Day. Raise your hand if you've seen Groundhog Day with Bill Murray. In Groundhog Day, which takes place in my home state of Pennsylvania, in Groundhog Day, Bill Murray wakes up every day, every February 2nd, for weeks. Every day he has trouble. Every day he wakes up to the same music. He bumps into the same homeless person. He talks to an annoying person from his past. And he does all kinds of things repeatedly as he feels cursed to relive this every day. But he has a goal. There's a woman that he wants to have for his loving partner. And so he tries every manipulative thing he can to win this woman's favor. And every time he does something, he makes a mistake and he goofs. And she gets insulted. And the next day, he gets up to that point and he goofs again. And then he gets a little bit further and he goofs again. And he tries all these different things. And then, after weeks and weeks and weeks of suffering through the same issues, as it is said, those who do not remember the past, are condemned to repeat it. He says, what haven't I tried yet? He realizes that kindness is what he hasn't tried yet. And so as the weeks went on and he repeated every day, he taught himself to be kind. And when he found that kindness, he found comfort in himself. This is a comedy. This is a movie. But this came from somebody's imagination who was thinking about the world of kindness. We have a book in the Bible, the book of Job, that some of you may be familiar with. Job was a character, and this is part of our biblical studies in Judaism, is that while we're taught that our Torah, that our Bible is the history of what happened, we also are taught that you can read between the lines and find more meanings upon meanings. The book of Job is one that some scholars think is not a true story, but it's a story about a man of very strong faith who praises God every day, and God has a mysterious arrangement with Satan because he's proud of Job. But Satan says, see what happens if his life isn't so good. And he has everything. He praises God, and then he loses everything. And he still praises God until he doesn't. And he questions. And when he questions, the answer he's given is, it's a mystery. Human beings can't understand everything. And his wife tells him, why are you praising this God who's making your life so miserable? And he says, we have to accept the good with the bad. How can we give credit for only the good and not accept the bad? But his friends say, you must have done something wrong. You've been such a good man your entire life. You gained such wealth. You gained such honor. And now you're having diseases. You're having tragedies in your life. It must be because you did something wrong. And Job doesn't accept that. And he finally says, Adonai natan v'Adonai lakach, yehi shem Adonai mevarach. God gives and God takes away. Blessed is the name of God. Because when bad things happen, we learn something. And we don't wish for bad things to happen. But when they do, our growth is coming into a learning. Rabbi Shapiro says that grace is about accepting what life is without wishing it were otherwise. If you depend on your goodness to be about reward and punishment, then you're like Job's friends who think that you only do something in order to get a reward or to avoid a punishment. Loving kindness is about doing something not because it's an obligation, not because someone told you to do it, but because it's in your heart. That's why the word charity in Hebrew scriptures does not exist, because charity can't be legislated if it's coming from your heart. Kindness cannot be legislated if it's coming from your heart. And that is the key to what we're doing. There's a lesson that the rabbis had taught about and I apologize because I'm trying to squeeze so much into such little time, but I hope that whatever we're getting is giving you a good springboard to your next studies. There was a rabbi who was teaching about the ceremony that separates the Sabbath from the rest of the week. And there's a technical time for that to happen. that night begins and day ends when three stars are visible in the skies, he taught. And one of the students said, well, how is it if day ends and night begins when three stars are visible in the sky? When does night end and day begin? And like any good teacher, he said, what do you think? And they made guesses. Maybe it's when from a distance you can see the difference between a lamb and a goat. And the rabbi said, no, that's not it. And another one said, maybe from a distance you can see the difference between a palm tree and an oak tree. And the rabbi said, that's not it either. And finally they asked, tell us, please, Rabbi, when is it that when is it that night ends and day begins? And the rabbi said, when you can look into the eyes of a stranger and see your brother or sister. Until then, it will always be dark for us. And so, my friends, as our meditation from Pema earlier in the evening talked about light, we can be that light when we look into each other's eyes and see the closeness that inspires us for kindness. Did I take up all the time and not leave time for questions?
That's okay, because the question that we have in the chat, you answered already very beautifully, both through story and in that final closing. Thank you, Rabbi Dan. Are you ready for me to close us in meditation and prayer?
Yes. If you will answer me, I didn't see what was in the chat. What was the question in the chat that you claim I answered?
Yes, the question was, how can people of different faiths or traditions show loving kindness toward each other?
Which it's as we talked about earlier, you and I, um, when you ask a rabbi a quick question, you never get a quick answer. And the answer to that, and I answered that very simply tonight. But of course, it's much more complicated than that and takes much more effort.
Absolutely.
Rabbi, we have a saying when our teachers are teaching when they're done and they're about to leave to travel or to go some other place, we ask a question and they say, and that is the question that shall remain unanswered until the next time we meet. So perhaps we'll leave the extensive answer for the next time we meet.
Beautiful.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Or would you give us a closing prayer?
I will. I invite you all to, if it feels right for you, to sit back in your seat, to close your eyes gently, and to just reconnect to the simple breath, not trying to change it at all, but just becoming of the breath that comes into the body and the exhale as the breath leaves the body. Taking a moment to feel that loving kindness that we filled ourselves with. Feeling that once again flowing freely, filling you up to the fullest extent. And then I invite you to extend that loving kindness out to this group that we've had the pleasure of their presence and their company today. Wishing each of us well. Wishing each of us happiness. And then extending that loving kindness to all living beings, wherever they are. And then returning ever so gently to your breath. As I close with the prayer of Saint Francis of Assisi. Let this be our heartfelt wish. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. O divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive, it is in pardoning that we are pardoned, and it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. And then taking a moment to ever so gently open your eyes, gazing at this beautiful group in front of us. Thank you all for joining us this evening. Thank you, Rabbi Dan.